Welcome to Leading for Life Stories Season 4. I'm Bob Judson. I'm the host for this podcast, and thank you very, very much indeed for joining me. Whether you're a new joiner or a seasoned listener, then I really hope you enjoy the mix of content that we provide. The personal stories, the thematic episodes, and of course, the fantastic guest interviews. If you've been with me since the beginning, then I'm enormously grateful for your loyalty and thank you so much. If you're relatively new to the show, then I really hope you like it, and I hope you find all of it interesting and some of it hopefully useful to you. Please subscribe on whichever channel it is you're using, whether it's YouTube, whether it's a podcast platform. That really helps us boost the show and get it over the hills on the algorithms. So if you can do that for me, I would be enormously grateful. But without further ado, let's go. Welcome back, everybody. My guest this week is Jacqui Wilkinson, Wing Commander Jacqui Wilkinson, Royal Air Force. But unusually, we're going to spend really very little time talking about Jacqui's Air Force time. And I'm going to say at the outset, this is a trigger warning episode because we do talk quite a bit about the abuse that Jacqui suffered as a child. A mixture of different types of abuse, but including sexual abuse from her father. And she goes into some detail about the trauma that she endured because that has shaped her in terms of the way she goes forward. So if this isn't your thing, then please be aware of that right now, that it is one where we talk about some of this in reasonable detail. Jacqui's written a book. She's written a book called Turning the Tables on Trauma, which is absolutely talking about how she came through this and turned what was by any measure a horrific childhood into a really powerful story where she has built again and again and again in terms of things she has done. She describes herself as a super achiever, as a sort of almost a compensating mechanism for some of that, I suspect. And it was a really emotional but also very, very interesting conversation. She's a remarkable lady who has done a tremendous amount and continues to do a tremendous amount, not only in terms of her own professional status and what she does now with roles as a keynote speaker, as an Air Force officer, obviously, first and foremost, still she's doing that, but also in the coaching and almost counseling world in terms of supporting people who have had similar experiences to her and helping them to overcome those, which I think is a tremendously powerful thing to do, and I really do applaud her for all that she's done. Great episode, great discussion, and really one of those ones that's moderately challenging in some ways because I really feel for her. I think it must have been just so difficult for her as a youngster, and I just think it's remarkable what she's achieved to come out the far side. So for me, this was a really special episode. I really hope you find it as interesting as I did. I would say enjoyable, but there's possibly not the right word with some of the things here that we talk about. But at the same time, it is enjoyable in terms of what she's actually she's achieved and what she's going on to do. And she's incredibly positive. Her outlook is incredibly positive, and that's very, very gratifying. And I think it's a marvelous story, really. So I hope you enjoy it. Off we go. Jacqui, welcome. What a privilege to have you on the show. I'm really looking forward to what I think will be a fascinating, if possibly at times a bit heartrending conversation. So thank you very much for joining.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a delight to be here, an honor and a privilege, actually. So thank you.
No, not at all. I'm really pleased to have you on because I think there's going to be lots of things we can talk about. And ordinarily, with my guest interviews, I kind of focus pretty much exclusively on work life and career of the people I'm talking to. But in your case, there's a whole ton of extra stuff we can talk about outside your RAF career, although we definitely will talk about that a bit. That we can discuss in this episode because I think there's so many valuable bits, and I think just to get us started and to get the kind of viewers and listeners a bit kind of to know you, in your words, can you just give us a bit of a sense of your story so far, as it were, because it's very far from complete, clearly, but the where you've got to so far.
Yeah, so just a quick summary of like where I am. So I grew up on in Shropshire, in Shrewsbury area, Iton-on-Severn, and I grew up on a farm. It was a 500-acre farm. There were crops and sheep, so it was an arable farm. And I went to school in Much Wenlock, and then I went and did my A levels in Shrewsbury. And then I decided I wanted to learn languages. And so I went to university in Liverpool and I got the opportunity of spending 2 years overseas. So a year in France, a year in Spain. And when I returned, I did 4 years in total. I got 3 postgraduate degrees, one from each country. I've got a French master's, would you believe? And it was phenomenal. So I got to live in different countries and experience, those different cultures, I think, which was really a good setup for understanding the world a bit more deeply. And then I applied for one job, the only job I wanted, and that was to the RAF, would you believe? And 23 years later, I'm still serving. And it's been a phenomenal career. I became a logistics officer and I did air movements. We talked about movements earlier. So I became an air movements officer. So I was one of those duty air movements officers who was giving you the bad news. The aircraft's gone unserviceable. And yeah, it's been such a rewarding career doing different global operations, working different locations all across the world. And also, one of the hooks to get me into the RAF was I love sport. I've always been quite competitive, and I took up athletics in the RAF, and I competed for about 10 years as mainly hurdles and high jump, but a heptathlete. And I absolutely loved it. It really does develop your leadership skills when you form a team. And yeah, I became team manager for the ladies team for 5 years, and it was great. It was at the inter-services. It was always David versus Goliath with the army. They would come in with their numbers, but we beat them. 4 out of the 5 years when I was leading. So I loved that. I loved that aspect of it, being in the RAF. It was phenomenal. And I also got an opportunity of doing another MSc in the RAF, which was phenomenal because I wrote a dissertation which was about primary socialization and how that develops your leadership qualities, which is very, very eye-opening when you become deeply self-aware. And that was back in 2016. And then from that me search, I'd call it, because I used myself as the kind of research case study, that me search became research, and I put it into a book. And that was published just under a couple of years ago, called Turning the Tables on Trauma. And all my profits go to charity, to the very first organisation that helped me when I was 17, and when I was really trying to find myself in the world. And yeah, I've now become a trauma informed leader, and I do many talks in defence, to defence, for defence. I'm sit on the Defence Mental Health and Wellbeing Committee, where we've got over 1,600 people in the network, and I've organised monthly coffee mornings to talk about all things to do with mental well-being and how we can become the best versions of ourselves. And I also speak on the Los Angeles Tribune Leadership Week as well. I was a founder for the Los Angeles Tribune Women's Journal, which is women who are aspiring to influence and positively make a difference in this world. And yeah, my mission now, I think, is just to help people understand how important trauma-informed leadership is all about. It's a place where you're not leading from an unconscious survival pattern mode where things are just the way they are. Actually, it's being aware of who you are and how you show up and how you can have this ripple effect, either positive or negative, on the people that you lead. And when you become yourself, like deeply consciously aware of yourself, you can really be a formidable leader. And so I talk about stuff like that. So that's me.
Yeah, wow. I mean, already what a story, and and so many things we can and hopefully will pick up on as we go through, because you've done so much in a relatively short space of time. I mean, I'm delighted you're enjoying your RAF career, and I know you're still serving at the moment, but we'll get to that and perhaps in a while. And yeah, I have been a victim of the movement system in the RAF many times during my own career, as we joked about, as self-loading freight getting onto transport aeroplanes.
Yeah.
So yeah, you'll have dealt with many of people like me on that side. You've hinted at this, but we'll get sort of straight into it. I mean, I always like to talk about early motivations with guests anyway. And in your case, I mean, I know from looking through your book and also listening to other podcasts you've done, that you had a very, very challenging childhood, and that already feels like a massive understatement in terms of the way I frame it. So, within the bounds of what you're comfortable with, can you give us an insight into what your early life was like, and kind of why that's taken you to where you are now?
Yeah, yeah, of course. So, as I just described earlier, growing up on a farm, we had horses and ponies, and it just sounds idyllic. It sounds like, oh, wow, that'd be amazing. However, my story shows that you never know what's happening behind closed doors. And I grew up with two parents who were highly dysfunctional, and they did things that were not great for me. So my father, he sexually abused me for about 6 years between the age of 6 to 12. And there's physical abuse as well. So I'd get a good beating every now and again. And my mother, she was a depressed alcoholic. And so there was, when she was, you know, the angry drunk, there'd be emotional, like verbal abuse, screaming, shouting, yelling, that kind of thing. Or she might have been passed out drunk. So there'd be the neglect that's happening. So there was these ream of ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, that I started to clock up. And then there was the household dysfunction. So I would witness quite a lot of violence between them, the shouting, screaming, yelling, punching, another black eye, I'll blame it on the horse that's reared up and hit her in the face. And it wasn't, it was my dad's fists, and knives, quite a lot of stuff that you're like, wow. But I just thought it was normal. I thought that how they interacted with us, how they were between themselves, was just normal. Now, it wasn't all bad. There were good times on the bad days, and there were bad times on the good days. It was a mix of everything. But and like I said, I just thought it was normal. But then I realized that how they behaved shaped me. It shaped my beliefs. And when they weren't around, there's just this belief that I was unlovable, that I wasn't enough, that I was never good enough, and that I wasn't worthy of someone to love me. Because ultimately, the initial caregiving that you have from your parents, that attachment that you bond with them, will make a place of how you show up in this world. So I learned hyper interdependence. I became very independent. Don't need to rely on anyone. Just got myself, because that's the only person that I can rely on. Very high functioning on the outside, but inside, just this lack of confidence and lack of belief. And many times throughout my career, when you get your OJAR debrief, so appraisal debrief, great, Jacqui, academic, you're very intelligent, you just need more confidence. And I was like, I'm trying. It's really interesting. So yeah, I got it. So it was just this, and I think I developed traits like people pleasing. So if I just keep doing more for other people, saying yes, even though if I'm overwhelmed, then I will be more. And then the super achiever mentality came about, hence the 4 postgraduate degrees that I acquired along the way, because I just thought, if I just do this or have this, then I'll be worth something. And it's interesting that those are very common beliefs that many people have who are super achievers. They're trying to fill this void, not to maybe the extent of what I went through, but there will be something. And they call different types of trauma. You've got the overt trauma, where these ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, of which there are 10. Um, and there are the sort of small t trauma, which is the covert stuff, where, a parent saying, or never saying that they love you, or giving you hugs, or never saying that, you're valued by how you achieve as opposed to who you are. Those kind of things. It really does shape who we are in this world. So my whole thing was, I needed to break the cycle. And when I was 17, I hit rock bottom, and I went to an organization, which is Axis, where all my profits for my book go to, because I spent 12 months in therapy, and like the wheels had come off, and I just felt like, no one loves me. I'm alone in this world. And it was a really sad time for me. And this lady called Victoria, she's a psychotherapist, did human-centered therapy. She gave me the belief in myself that I could achieve anything I wanted to achieve, despite the cards that I'd been dealt by my parents. And then I obviously went to university. So I got this the therapy that I went through at 17. It really phenomenally helped me, because I went through university, got the 3 degrees, and I had this belief in myself that I could achieve. And that's what gave me the confidence to apply for the Royal Air Force and become an officer, and to help, serve my country. Essentially, that was what I wanted to do more than anything, is to give back. And I breaking the cycle for me was when I joined the Royal Air Force. I decided that no one needs to know what my parents were like, because I don't want them to judge me on my parents' behaviors. So I locked all of my trauma into a box, and I vowed no one will ever know what my parents were like, because they won't think I'm good enough. And it was this feeling of shame, a shame-based family, that, if my parents like that, people would judge me on them. But we should never judge a book by its cover. We shouldn't judge people based on that, because no matter the cards that you're dealt, you can rewrite your whole narrative, and you don't have to repeat the cycle. And my story is about where I believed that, when something happens to you, you're more likely to repeat the cycle. But my story is, it doesn't have to be that way. I now have two children who are 8 and 6, and I vowed to myself before I had children that I would never behave or treat my children how I was treated. And I remember a therapist once saying, because I said, I think I've been an awful mother, I've got really awful role models, I don't want children. And she said something fundamentally to me, was, well, you know exactly how not to be, which is the perfect place to start. And that's what therapy is good for, because you get these gems, there's these
Mm.
one-liners that then shifts your belief, your fundamental beliefs about yourself. It's like, yeah, I can be an amazing mum. I just need to learn how, because I was never given those gifts as I was growing up. So let's learn the opposite. And I researched conscious parenting, positive parenting, how you empower and embolden a child from early birth as they grow through their development stages, and give them those gifts so they believe in themselves and that they can go on to achieve anything. And that's how I've raised my two children. Like my 6-year-old daughter, she understands what the inner critic is, and I show them what it looks like when it turns up, and what that voice is, and why that voice appears. And we have those conversations. And it's a protective part. It wants to keep us safe. It wants to not let us get embarrassed in front of our friends. But actually, we need to lean into failure. We need to learn, and because we grow from failure. So I think I had a conversation with my son. I said, have you got the inner critic? Do you hear that voice? And he said, no. What about when you play sports? And he's like, oh yes, I'm a rubbish football goalie. I don't like playing goalie. I was like, okay, well, that's the inner critic talking to you. And it's stopping you from practicing because you don't want to be embarrassed and let a goal in, right? He's like, yeah. So, well, when we stop practicing, we stop learning and we don't grow. We have to learn and fail to grow. And he's like, oh. And so this is how you break the cycle, is you give these gifts, you become really self-aware, and then you can give those gifts to the children. And that's how the cycle breaks. So that's like being pivotal, and that regulation, self-regulation through naming and taming our behaviors is absolutely crucial. So yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, what an awful start to your life, though. And was it just you, or do you have siblings?
Yeah, I had two older sisters, so they experienced very similar treatment to me.
Oh my goodness. And I mean, how have they come through it then as well, in a similar way to you, or has that been challenging for them?
We all responded differently. They say that two people can experience the exact same traumatic event and will respond very differently. And this is based on how you interpret and internalize the event. So I became very hypervigilant, hyper alert, and that would be my responsive internal system. So what happened with me was that with the abuse from my father, it would always happen at night, and the lights would go on. I could hear the creaking floorboards. So I had an inner guard dog that would wake me up, and I became very hyper vigilant to watch out for the next step. And that's a way of protecting. It's a self survival protective mechanism, and it would keep me safe, because sometimes I could be awake and negotiate and like not allow him to get into bed with me. On other times, if I didn't wake up, then that would happen. So this was where my protective survival mechanism became hypervigilant. Now, fast forward when you're in Afghanistan and you're sleeping on days and there's noise all the time and light, that becomes very difficult with your sleeping pattern. So you have to therefore understand that this survival mechanism is no longer helpful for me as an adult, but it's the way it is. So it's understanding that. Whereas other people might become disassociated, so they'll just numb out and disassociate from the trauma. And this is another way of where our nervous response system reacts to protect us. And that's what I found that my middle sister, she did. She would disassociate. So we all, responded very differently into what we did. And that is in the research that I did in my master's and the theories that I've looked at, that's very common. We all have different response mechanisms to survive.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting, and I mean, I just feel for you so much in terms of all of that. I mean, I think it was interesting you picking up on that sort of becoming hyper independent because, I mean, my story is completely different to yours. I mean, my father died when I was 3 years old. My mother was then a single mum in the '60s, which was obviously pretty tough. She was
Yeah.
running a boarding kennels and breeding dogs, and so I was kind of child labor, and it would be considered that today, I think, in her kennels during the holidays. And I used to absolutely love going back to school when I was back at boarding school because that was where all my friends were. We live in the middle of nowhere in where I now live, actually out in Sussex, so it's very very rural, and it does drive you in a different direction, which for me ultimately turned out to be very helpful because it did actually make me the kind of independent person that I became and gave me the kind of focus. But I can see it now, not least in some of the conversations I have with my wife, where she views me as somewhat too independent some of the time. My behavior some of the time is, I have to monitor and adjust and listen to her on that because occasionally I'm not, I guess, tuned into other people enough because of probably some stuff that happened to me a long time ago. Because I mean, I'm well, quite a lot older than you, and yeah, it is interesting. So much of what you say resonates really, really strongly there, and I just feel for you. Equally, I was a school governor at my old school at Christ Hospital in Horsham, where we were dealing, I was a safeguarding governor for most of my time there, and we were dealing a lot with historic sex abuse issues with teachers, and along with a lot of independent schools from that kind of time period, and not just schools, obviously, lots of organizations, the church, the sporting associations, and so on, have had all these kind of dramas. And talking to the victims, stroke survivors of abuse on that, when we were trying to kind of mediate our way through and find a way to help them get some kind of closure, move forward, and for them, because in many instances it had ruined their lives. I mean, some people, exactly as you say, some people had dealt with it very differently. They kind of compartmentalized it, moved on, and they were fine. Some people actually found it, it had totally shattered them, and and you look at the way their lives had turned out versus the way they might have turned out. I mean, mercifully for you, obviously largely through your own efforts and so on, you've got to a very much better place. Although, I mean, I'm interested, just before we close the chapter, how did the story end, if you like, with your parents and with you? Because I know there's probably a bit more to it in terms of what happened to you as you were transitioning out of childhood into the Air Force.
Yeah, so I when I was 12, my father pleaded guilty. So my elder sister told my mother what was going on. She was 4 years older than me, or she is 4 years older than me. And my mother questioned my father. He admitted what was going on.
Did she genuinely not know at that point?
Well, I don't think so. She says she doesn't know, but she was an alcoholic. So it could have been that, it only ever happened when she was completely drunk. So I don't know. As I'm now a mother, I question it. Before I was a mother, I believed it. So it's an interesting one when you become a parent.
Mm.
You're like, how do you not know? But and sometimes they just can't deal with it. They that belief that that's happening. But I was lucky because there are many stories you hear where the mother doesn't believe the child and does nothing, and my mother did. So they went to the doctor, who then informed the police. The police then arrested my father, and it went to court. He pleaded guilty. And so I was during my first year of secondary school. He pleaded guilty, and he was given a 2 year suspended custodial sentence. So no punishment, just slap on the wrist, put on the child. offender registry, and that was it. So in my mind, I was like, well, that wasn't that bad then, was it? It was one of those. You just don't. You're 12. You're very young, and so I grew. So at secondary school, it was just this. Will people find out? And this guilt, this shame, this embarrassment of what was going on. But he was pulled out of my life, told to leave the house, and that was it. He was no longer a father to me. I didn't have a father. I never saw him again. Um, and when you look back at that, I never grieved father. I lost my father anyway for what he did, but I never
You
grieved.
literally never saw him again after that.
No, I saw him in passing, but I never had a relationship. I never spoke to him.
Wow.
I phoned him up when I was 18, when I was in that counselling that I mentioned, because I was taught in the counselling how to have a conversation with him without fear. And then I took the bull by the horns and I phoned him and I questioned him, why did you do this? Why do you realize what you've done to me? Do you realize that, like, how you've hurt me? And he apologized. He said that it's no excuse, but when he was a child, he was sexually abused, and it was a priest in his school. And what he said to me was, it's the way I thought you show love. And I'm not sure if there's any truth in that, but that's what he said to me. So that counseling or therapy gave me the strength to question him because I had to know why. But then, yeah, never spoke to him again. And then he passed away in 2016. And his death, he died of cancer. He had 3 attacks of cancer. And I'm not sure if that's the 3 daughters. I kind of talk about that in my book, about karma. And he died, and it railroaded me. I was a squadron leader at the time and working in an operations floor plate, and suddenly I couldn't function. My executive function went because I did not know why this grief just consumed me. I mean, grief is difficult enough when you lose a loving parent, but when you lose a parent who's not only abused you, hurt you, was that taken out of your life, and then I kind of describe it in my book like this inner child. She kind of erupted from his flame. So, like, the phoenix, she rose from his death, from his ashes, and she was angry. She was hurt. She's like, where's my justice? I've had to live with this my whole life. You've led a life, you've carried on, and you've died, and then there's nothing. So this anger was inside me, and resentment was pretty strong. And this is when I had a full breakdown in the RAF, and I went to the Padres, the Med Centre, and welfare, and I had to be signed off because I said, look, I can't function. I need to understand and uncover, like, get to the root cause analysis of why this is happening to me. When you're blindsided by something, and they gave me that time, and I'll be forever grateful that they did that for me. It's about 2 months that I had off, and I was able then to go back to therapy, figure out what was going on, and really deeply, and understand, like, what was going on. And what really the basis of that was, there was a splitting of the cells. So we are formed internally. We're made up of all different parts, like they're called the protector parts. And the splitting of the cells meant that I wasn't showing up as my true authentic self. I had to cover and hide, like, what my parents were really like, and this, that, and the other, because of the shame. And what I discovered is that there was the Jacqui in uniform. I should be this. I should be strong. I shouldn't be vulnerable. All these shoulds. And actually, no, I want to be who I am and show up the way that I want to show up, be empathic, be compassionate for people, and have that vulnerability, because when you have those conversations, it leads to a deeper respect, deeper communication, deeper, team, like, cohesion. And that's how I wanted to show up in the world, but I wasn't able to because of my story. So I then, when I returned to work, I began my subunit command role. And I was honest with my chain of command. This is my story. This is what I'm doing. And I started showing that vulnerability. And I was supported. My subordinates, they supported me. And then what that gave me was an opportunity to, they were able then to share. If they were struggling with certain things in their lives, it opened up a space and gave them permission to say, yeah, I'm having this. And so that was a huge change. And that was where I learned that this is what leadership is really about, is being your true authentic self, the person that you are, not who you think you should be. With all the rules and that. So that's what happened with my father. He was then, out of my life. And that, I mean, I know that that's a different story, but the transformation that I had following his death and how it helped me heal was phenomenal. In relation to my mother, she was always in my life. She was always an alcoholic, drinking, and I always hoped that she would stop drinking, and she never did. And then she would make promises that she'd stop drinking. And about a year before my father passed away, my mum went to prison for drink driving for the fifth time. And this is why I was like, I don't understand the justice system. So my mother goes to prison for drink driving and my father doesn't for sexual abuse. I don't understand the system. So all of that was mired with
I
this
share your view. I don't
reality.
understand that either. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah. But it was the fourth or fifth time, and this time she crashed a car and she had her grandchildren, my sister's children, in the back of the car. So she could have killed them. It was quite serious, and she was, several times over the limit, and she smashed up the car. So it was that behavior. The judge was like, you need to learn from this. Um, and then when I had children myself, she was looking after my son, and she smacked my son's hand once when he was 1. And then it was a case of, I don't want that behavior that she did to me to repeat again to my grandchildren. My job is to keep them safe. And so I made a decision that I can't have her in my life anymore. And that's what happened. So this was about 6 years ago. And I've kind of always questioned this. Is this, a healthy boundary to set up and go, no, this is where I want it to be? And I firmly believe that there was always this negativity around her that she never got over. And I don't want that in my life. So you make these hard choices of choosing estrangement or choosing to have someone in your life that then just saps it. And I made that really hard choice for the sake of my children, that I'm there to protect them. And if that's from negativity or that's from behaviors that I don't want them to witness, then I will do that. And so, yeah, she's still alive, but she's no longer in my life. And that's sad. So it's sad that I never had, parents. And when you have Mother's Day and Father's Day, it was always a thorn in the side. It's like when you see people celebrating the love of their parents and how wonderful they are, I'm like, oh, I wish I had that. And you
No,
don't.
yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, yeah, when both my parents, my father passed away a long time ago. My mother died nearly 20 years ago now, and
Mm,
and yeah, so I kind of get the missing them bit, but I mean, obviously from a very, very different starting point, and I mean, I just admire you enormously for what you've done. I mean, to come through that and come through it stronger, to be a mum yourself now and have those kind of approaches with your children, because I think there is a bit of a thing, isn't there, with abuse in particular, where it can be generationally passed on. I mean, and there's no
yeah,
question that that is a risk factor.
yeah.
So to break that cycle, to use your words, I mean, I think is really powerful. I mean, and I think you obviously with what you're doing now, and the approach you've taken, because you've kind of played relatively light touch on that in terms of what you're doing. You did in your intro, you talked about working in this sort of space a lot whilst doing an Air Force job as well. I mean, you are. I mean, I'm kind of blown away, really. I mean, for normal mortals, one career is quite enough, most of the time. But you seem to be doing a myriad of different things. RAF career, competitive athlete for a long time, published author, hypnotherapist, coach now, keynote speaker, and all these things. And you are your hyper achiever bit is really playing through in that, but in a really, really positive way. I mean, I can see from everything I read about you and seeing what you post on LinkedIn and so on and so forth, you're genuinely very, very inspirational, and that must be a tremendous asset for people that are around you, whether it's professionally or personally, to see and feel the kind of support you can offer and the help you can bring to them. And I think good for you, fantastic. I'd imagine that in the RAF alone, there are plenty of leaders who are just not very empathetic and supportive, and actually to have somebody who has been through all of this and is not necessarily wearing their heart on the sleeve. I don't mean it that way, but I mean is willing to be vulnerable and share some vulnerability. And because I completely agree with you. I mean, different experiences, and I won't bother with the stories now from my side, but I have had a fair few occasions when I have done stuff really almost unwittingly, and I'd not really thought about it, but the message that it has sent to the people that have worked for me has been incredibly positive, and sort of freed them up to think, oh, okay, well, fine, he's prepared to talk about that, and he's prepared to behave like that, and he's supporting us like that, and he's taking one for the team for us rather than throwing us under the bus, and those kind of things, which makes such a big difference. So I'm totally with you in the leadership space. I think it's incredible. But back to you. I mean, I've listed a whole load of things there. How on earth do you fit all this stuff in? I mean, you must have the most incredibly busy life.
You just prioritize, don't you? We get used to prioritizing, and it's habits. We have bundles of energy, and sometimes it's like, how do you focus that energy? And I think the habits that I've set up, it's not what I do, it's who I am. And when you kind of lead from that perspective with your habits, I am an athlete, therefore I train as an athlete, and you have that discipline. And that means, for example, non-negotiable training. I still train regularly, just for different types of training, not athletics training, but those types of things energize you, which means you can then achieve more. And that's absolutely key. So my morning sessions is fundamental to that of training. And I have an amazing relationship with my husband. He's also serving, he's in the army. And we have this such formidable relationship where we support each other, because relationships aren't all one person gives and the other receives. It ebbs and flows, and it's not always 50-50. Sometimes I need more support. So, that they'll be like, I need to support here, so he'll do more for the kids, and then vice versa. So always that ebb and flow of a relationship is what's absolutely crucial, because we are this little nucleus of a family where it's us, and we will try and do our very best, and that's how we operate. But it's just simple things like we do a daily gratitude practice around the dinner table. And when I learned about this gratitude practice and how formidable it is, it just re-energizes you, so it shapes how you are. So we each of us say 3 things that we're grateful for that day, one thing that we love about ourselves, and then one thing that we tried to do but failed. And it's that, that all of those things really help to positively wire your brain into achieving more. So you don't get stuck in the negative cycles, oh, I can't do this or whatever. You actually focus on what I can achieve. And sometimes you can spend 5 hours doing something, whereas actually if you go, right, I'm going to focus, I'm going to achieve it in 20 minutes, and you switch on and you power that. You know what it's like, don't you? When you suddenly got to deliver a brief, you just focus that attention to that, and you can achieve so much more. So I think I operate in that space a lot more now than what I used to.
Yeah, I love the gratitude practice thing. I've not heard that. That's great. How do you
Yeah.
balance? I mean, it's interesting. Your husband in the army, 2 pretty young children. I mean, I know full well the tensions that can bring with both of you serving, even in the same service, never mind in different services. I mean, you must find that's pulling you in different directions, just in terms of deployments and postings and those sorts of things. I mean, how have you managed to work through all of that?
It is. It's always been, and obviously because we get moved every 2 years, so it's a cycle that you go through every 18 months, and it is hard. It's really difficult. And what I'm finding more now, it's hard for the kids because my son is 8, and the friendships and moving schools. That is the hardest thing that pulls on my heartstrings the most. Is like, oh, I have an amazing career, but is this right for them? And it's really, really difficult. But once again, that ebb and flow that I mentioned, if we decide, okay, my job's the priority here, he tells his chain of command and career manager, I'm the supporter now. I'm supporting because I need to support that. And then it might flip on its head. So it's that yin and yang, really, that balance, and it's open communications. It's always discussing, always, I'm the planner, he's the action man. It's interesting. It's knowing your strengths and weaknesses about how you operate and do everything you do. But it's not easy. I'm not going to say it's easy. It's extraordinarily challenging. two military careers and two little children with no family support system, because we don't, it is just us. So you're relying on childcare, you're relying on, the goodwill of your friends that you've got at the schools that they sort of go to. So yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah, interesting. I've heard plenty of people. I don't have children, but the friends of mine that do, obviously many of them have often said exactly what you've said, that the sort of moving schools, changing friends for their children
Mm.
when they're young is a real challenge. I mean, interestingly, the only thing in the 34 and a half years of my service that I actually got fed up with was moving house and the constant
Mm.
moving.
Yeah.
And my sort of mantra was I've hung my pictures on enough walls, and you look at my backdrop, I've got a few pictures. So yeah, I share your view. I think it's really challenging. I think the services have got a lot better at it, actually. I mean, it used to be, really terrible, to be honest, in terms of the draconian approach to for command appointments in particular. You had to be married, you had to be accompanied. Generally, it was years gone by, it was much more male dominated service. So that often meant that the wives were the ones that were not able to work with serious careers and all those sorts of things. And following the flag was absolutely what you had to do. And I think we've gone a long way in the right direction, but it's clearly still pretty challenging. And yeah,
Mm.
I feel for you, because I think particularly on deployments, that's very hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And just yeah, the moving. Every time you move house, how much time are you losing on life?
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
that's how I
yeah.
look at it. It's just like it's the planning, it's the move, and then it's the settling in, and all of that takes an inordinate amount of time. And when you're doing it every 2 years, you think, crikey, I lose like 6 months of my life just moving.
The positive side of it is you spring clean well. The no, that is definitely a benefit. When my mother
Yeah.
died, and she lived in actually where we live now, we knocked her house down and rebuilt it. But when we were clearing out the house, as inevitably you have to do, she had been here for 40 years, and and
Oh, crikey.
so that generates a whole level of extra challenge in terms of
Yeah.
accumulated stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, and some amusing things that, when we were doing the kitchen, for example, we had things in the cupboards that it wasn't that the sell by or use by date had gone by. They didn't have sell by dates on them because they were so old that you kind of
Wow.
go, oh my goodness. Right. So it was quite entertaining for sure.
Yeah.
But sticking with you personally just for a minute on
Mm.
and looping to the leadership thing, because as I said, the podcast is really about leadership. I'm really interested in, you've talked a lot about how your leadership style has developed a bit, but I mean uh, just build on that slightly, how you've grown over time from the time you joined the Air Force, and to where you are now, in terms of consciously, unconsciously, your style, the way you've approached it. What kind of traits and values do you hold most dear, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I think when you first join, you conform, don't you? You join the collective, and your identity is shaped by the organization that you join. And the values of the Royal Air Force will rise, aren't they? Respect, integrity, service, and excellence. And those values do align to the person that I am. So that's useful, because when you're misaligned from your values, it can cause this bleeding of power of who you are. So that was useful. But the what really helped initially was the high standards, the expectation. And when you surround yourselves with people who have such a high level of expectation of themselves, but also of what they're delivering, that is that's phenomenal. And I really truly value that. I think it's a cohesive environment of people who just want to do the best for this world. And then obviously when I changed into my own leadership style, when I grew into it, I think what was empowering is the awareness of psychological safety and physiological safety. So how important that is. Whereas, in a hierarchical organization like the military, being able to raise your hand and question something, or, ask questions, etc., is sometimes more challenging. And I think in the RAF we learned this, didn't we, with aircrew and having back crew, where you actually you lead like that. Whereas I think for me, the emotional intelligence, not judging someone by just hearsay, I think that is crucially important. So I'll give you a story. I was posted to Lynham. We spoke about Lynham earlier, and I was flight commander. I was one of the GTM movements officers. posted in, and my predecessor was warning me about this SAC at the time, senior aircraftman, that's what they were called, and saying he's useless. He needs to be disciplined. You need to probably get rid of him. He's not showing up, or when he does show up, it's late. He's standards. He keeps making mistakes. I was like, crikey, we have someone like that. And then I was really concerned because I was like, well, I don't like confrontation. Like, who does? I don't want to do discipline. Like, I'm not that sort of person. So as you do, you bring him in for an interview, and I brought him in, and I asked the sergeant to come in and sit in the back of the room as a witness, just in case it went horribly wrong. And interestingly, when I started speaking to him, I recognized that he was very intelligent, really switched on. And this wasn't anything to do with his potential. It was more to do with um, something that was unresolved inside of him. And he joined the RAF at 16 because he escaped his family home. Now, his story is that his father used to beat him up and used to beat his mother up. So he joined the RAF to start a new life. And when he joined, his only goal was, I just need to join the RAF. And he did that. And then he was like, he had no goals, he had no future. And what was happening was I witnessed in that conversation a nervous system that was stuck in survival mode. And what I mean by that is that there were things where I could recognize them because I saw them in myself. It was this nervous system that wasn't operating. And then I said to him, you know, the bravest word you will ever say was help. And let me explain it like this. You know, when you became a mover, did you know how to load and offload an aircraft? No. Well, you had training for it, right? Yeah. Well, have you ever had training on your mind? How your thoughts and beliefs shape your behaviors and your actions and the way you show up in this world. And he looked at me like, no. So, well, I recommend you have training for your mind, for your brain, and how it operates. Because when you do, you will see a different side to yourself and you will understand yourself. And when you have that power, you can then change how you show up in this world. And you could see his face where he just then released and he broke down in front of me. And when we talk about it, you know, retrospectively, he said, I never had someone that just didn't judge me and that was there and just listened to me. And, you know, this guy now, he's a flight sergeant, so almost at the pinnacle of his career. He's leading his own teams. He is a published author 3 times over. He's done his master's and he's now looking to do the CAS fellowship to do his PhD. And he's one of the 20 of the lead. There's a group of ranks who are on the lead team, and he's one of those. And I talk about him in my book, and it's to explain that we can all judge, we can all assume, but you never know someone's story. You never know their why and what happened to them. So when we ask the questions, well, what happened to you, as opposed to what's wrong with you, that is a powerful question. And that's what I did. It's like, well, what happened to you? And you understand the whys, you can then help them understand and reach their true potential. So he didn't have a belief in himself. He didn't have a goal. So I just gave him a belief and transformed that. And that is what leadership's all about. It's to find the value in someone and to let them see their own value so that they can reach their true potential and not be limited by their own limiting beliefs that were shaped when they were younger. So that's what trauma-informed leadership's all about.
Wow, what a great story, and well done you. I mean, I guess you're probably still in touch with him, and he must be immensely grateful to you because you're the one that unlocked all of that. And you know, otherwise, I can completely recognize from my own time in the military how very easy that could have ended differently, and that he was cast on the scrap heap, thrown
Yeah.
out, and then it was a completely different outcome. So, no, enormous credit to you personally for doing that, because I think yes, it helps obviously if you've got kind of, you recognize some of this stuff in yourself, but you know, just having the style and the approach and the self-awareness and the kind of emotional intelligence to look through that, and as you say, not judge. I mean, because it's such a common thing that I think in all walks of society we do. You know,
Yeah.
we just judge people instantly. I mean, in the training work that I do very often, I talk to people about, you know, being judged. I mean, particularly it's interesting with younger generation these days, where they're often very forthright in their views about, I should be able to wear what I want and do what I want, say what I want, you know, appear as I want. You know, it's not up to you to turn around and make judgments about me. And the point I make to them in the kind of commercial setting is that that's true. All of that's completely true. You can take that view. However, you have to recognize that other people will judge you. And often they'll judge you before you've even opened your mouth. So if you walk into the room, they will have formed a view of you in the first few seconds before you've said anything or done anything. And you've then got to work to either reinforce and enhance that or to turn around and change it. So
Yeah.
you need to think about how you position yourself to to be in a good space with that, because it's too easy to set yourself up negatively and create a problem which you don't need to create in that space. So no, but that's a great story. I love it. That's so good.
Yeah, and just to so on that story as well, one of the best things, yeah, is that he was when I was his boss, his son was around about one. And his story is formidable because he talks in my book about I broke the cycle for him and his family 2 generations because his son is now looking to be a doctor. He was training, he wanted to join the Olympics. He was a national Welsh swimmer, getting golds in that in the Welsh swimming team at 16. And it just shows that if I'd have judged him and treated him and picked him out, what would have happened to that next generation?
Mm.
And that's how that's the ripple effect of trauma-informed leadership. It's not just the person, it's the families, it's the next generation. And it's bigger than what we think it is.
Yeah, 100%. No, great. That's really, really powerful. Um, it's probably a difficult question for you to answer, and so I'm going to sort of choose it carefully. But given how far you've actually come, if you looked all the way back now and you were advising young Jacqui, still sort of school age before you've gone on to become a hyperachiever and got more degrees than I even know how to count, what advice would you be giving to yourself?
Yeah, that it's about that shame. So you've got to remember that if something happened to you, it's not your fault. You're not the problem. And it will form a belief inside of you, but it's knowing that beliefs can change. Beliefs aren't something you're born with and you have that one belief and that is who you are. Beliefs change when you prove with first-hand evidence that I can do this. So you've got to step out and you've got to do the hard work. You've got to put yourself out there to give yourself that belief system to make those beliefs change, if that makes sense. And that's what I wish I, knew earlier. And I learned it at 17, but I really wish I'd been told at 12. Like when all that was happening, I really wish I didn't struggle so much during my secondary school because I wish someone had given me that knowledge. So to the younger version of myself is that achievements as well. If you're filling the voids, the emptiness, the loneliness inside of you by achieving this and achieving that, that will never lead to deep fulfillment. It's not. They're short-lived because once you get that achievement, you'll be looking for the next one, and then the next one, and the next one. So it's actually about how can I deeply satiate and feel fulfilled naturally from within and learning to let go of all of that shame. And I think the biggest thing for me, and I wrote about it in my dissertation, was just letting go, knowing what letting go looks like, and letting go of the shame, and finding forgiveness. So I found that forgiving what's happened is crucial. Now, this doesn't mean condoning the behaviors of what happened to me. Forgiveness is more like letting go of the resentment and anger about what happened, which will then shape how you show up. So it might make you more reactive because you've got more anger inside of you. And when you let go of that resentment, you're more likely to be able to respond in challenging situations and not react. That is the power that you can give yourself. So there's always this question of do you forgive? Do you forgive? And that's my interpretation of forgiveness. And when I learned how to do that, and back in 2016, I had to let go of all of that anger where I talked about, this 6-year-old, she was really angry, just letting that go. And interestingly, we become who we are when we learn to let go of who we are not. Yeah. So we become who we are when we learn to let go of who we are not. So I let go of who I thought I should be, and then I became who I actually am. And that is it is defining. It explains and actually having, your voice knowing that your story matters, you matter, all of these things. So it's very, very deep. But I think the biggest thing is that your past does not define your future. You know, you might be dealt a hand of nine aces, those cards, but it doesn't mean that that's going to shape who you become. You have a choice, and the choices that you make every single day will define who you become, and that's what's really counts.
No, it's very, very powerful, and I think, I mean, you've mentioned it a few times. I think that the shame element and the hiding it because you don't want to expose it. I mean, when I think about you, at school when your father was obviously going through the court system, and then obviously ultimately wrongly probably didn't go to prison, but dealing with that, hiding that, the same, joining the Air Force, coming into that kind of environment where most of the time people probably ask you awkward questions that you kind of go, I don't really want to answer that, and finding that way through is difficult. So no, I totally understand where you're coming from, and I think that's amazingly powerful. Highs and lows. Again, I sort of tread carefully with this because normally this is it's something I always cover with people because all leaders have got highs and lows. But in your case, I'm guessing you've got more than most, you know, in both categories, actually, I think. But when you look back across your life, I always tend to start with saying, what do you wish you had done differently and why?
It's an interesting one. So, what do I wish I'd done differently? I think I'm in this mindset now of no regrets. Life happened for you. So, everything that happened to me was meant to happen at exactly the right time when it happened to make me who I am today. I wouldn't be this person if I hadn't gone through that adversity, because adverse challenges, those hard times, it's what makes you strong. It really, I got strength from my scars. And it's a bit like trees that grow up without high winds. The wood is not as strong as those that actually have to battle against the wind. So those that arduous conditions are what make the wood harder. So it's made me who I am. So I have this gratitude now of they created a strength in me that I'm now able to transform to help others find the strength in themselves. And I think, yeah, so if I say I would, what I'd rather not have done that, no, it was all meant to be, in a
No, that's a
spiritual.
great answer, and you're not the first to say that actually, because I think, I mean, if I look at myself, I think I'm almost in a similar category. I mean, with no regrets. I mean, I very much am a forward-looking person. I don't tend to have significant dramas. I mean, a good example. I had a couple of weeks ago. I had a pretty nasty car accident. Not my fault at all. I was overtaken by a guy who was fleeing a robbery, and I was just turning right at the time, and he hit me doing about 60 miles an hour, and I was doing about 5, and I was incredibly lucky to survive, and totally wrecked the car and all that sort of thing, and the rest of the story is unimportant now. But the interesting thing about it is, for me, I mean, it's not my first near-death experience. Obviously, I haven't been in the Air Force flying airplanes for a long period of time and all the rest of it. But I pretty much just went, well, okay, I'm survived, I'm fine, I'm let's go. Whereas other people, including my wife, have kind of taken a totally different stance. Where they they would have a different response mechanism to it. So
Yeah,
I'm with you on the no regrets bit. I kind of go, well, it is what it is, and let's just go forward from it. Don't turn around and start constantly hyper analyzing what might have been, because it didn't happen that way. This stuff happened. This was good, this was bad, and now you're in a better place as a result of it. So no, that's it's a terrific answer. High point, what's your career high point so far?
career high point. So yeah, it's achieving the rank of wing commander. At the moment, I never believed that that would happen when I first joined up. I just like that, similar to the SAC. I just thought I just want to get in. I just want to be an officer. And that's phenomenal. Having been part of an athletics community and beating the army, it was just brilliant. All of these are phenomenal points. But I think that my biggest high point is not my career. It's breaking the generational cycle for the sake of my children. That is the thing that when I when I'm old and I'm laying on my deathbed and I think back, that is the thing that I did. And what would the world be like if we could all do that for the sake of our next generation? How would the world be? if we just stop this negativity and just cycle of abuse, it would just be such a different place. Now, I know that's big thinking, but there's nothing special about me. It's possible. Every single human being can transform and change and break that cycle, because the mind that holds the problem also holds the solution. And that is absolutely key in the way that you think about life. So, if anything, that's the proudest moment or the thing that I've achieved.
Understandably so. No, I totally agree with you. I think that's yeah, massively important for you, your children, and I mean, interestingly, do your children aware or of your sort of family history?
Yeah, so they are aware that they weren't great parents, and I haven't talked about the sexual abuse, but I've definitely spoken about the physical abuse and that my mum's an alcoholic and the way she was, just so that has their awareness.
Mm,
I will never hide this from them. They will absolutely know this is what's happened, and because this is who I am, and equally in relation to, I know how much abuse, sexual abuse happens, sexual assault, and things that happen to people. So I'm constantly talking about them. And I talk about in my book that this awareness that something may happen, and the moment that it does, if something were to happen, to share it and talk about it and not hide it. Because if they live in silence with something that has happened, then that will negatively affect them. It's all about talking about it. So the more open and honest that you are with children, and I am with my children, then that awareness is absolutely key and crucial. So it's just the way I lead.
mm. No, no, it's brilliant. It just sort of occurred to me in terms of your generational breaking the cycle bit, because I think you're right. I think it's massively important that they kind of know what's
Mm.
happened, where the background is, and that it continues on with that same theme for them over time, for sure. So, no, interesting. I mean, low points. You've clearly had a lot. What's the lowest of the low points?
I think that was when my father passed away, and I went through that whole grieving cycle, which was completely unexpected. It was, everything that I'd suppressed about what had happened and just erupted and bubbled up. But I realized that that was all meant to happen, and it really did make me deeply psychoanalyze myself, and understand why I am the way I am, and that led to huge transformation and just this transcendence, really, of understanding myself, of how I want to show up. So from the depths of my despair, enlightenment happened. So, they always say that you hear these stories, don't you, where at rock bottom I found this, and that's genuinely what happened to me. And it wasn't easy. I had to do the hard self work. I had to really change reactive behaviors. And I share in my book about how, uh, yeah, I met my husband, who's my boyfriend, then 12 years ago in the Falklands. And we met, fell in love. It was a honeymoon period. It was wonderful. And then all of this in 12 months, very soon after we'd met, this beautiful destruction hit our lives, with my mum going to prison, my auntie died, his mother died, and then my father died. And it was just like, here you go, deal with this. One of
Wow.
those, you just circumstances. And it really impacted our relationship really negatively. And I became this volatile person where I was started to treat my boyfriend the same way that my mother treated me, screaming, shouting, yelling at him. And I was just like, I don't want to be like this. Why is this happening? And it's that this volatility was there. And the transcendence that happened in this relationship was that I had to deeply become aware of why that trigger was happening, to then rewire it from an unconscious reaction trigger to a conscious behavior. And it took a good 6 months. We both went into therapy, and we both went into couples counseling. And by doing that, I uncovered the deeper roots and changed all of my behaviors. So this doesn't just happen. You have to do the hard self work to deeply understand yourself and make those changes. And then when we did that, and I remember coaching him of how to be. And people often ask, well, how do you do that? What does that look like? And I was like, well, we named and tamed my episodes. And do you know what a shmoolie is? Shmoolie? No? So
No.
it's a military flare. So a
Oh,
shmoolie,
okay. Yeah. So yeah, I don't.
yeah,
Fine. I know what one of those is. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Parachute
So
flare.
we would call my episode Schmoolies, because I would be like, fine, 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 not fine, like that. Okay, if you imagine the scenario, and he called them Schmoolies, and I'm like, what's a Schmoolie? It's like, what's a military flare? And for those who don't know, it's a in the hours of darkness, you send up a Schmoolie so you can see where the enemy is and how close they are. And sometimes, if you've seen in films, like, oh my God, they're really close. So the enemy was Jacqui, the internal Jacqui, who was like struggling with her internal emotions. So that was the enemy. It wasn't my boyfriend. It was internally for me. And we would, like I said, name and tame them. When you externalize a behavior by naming it, that's how you tame it, because you can objectify, well, why is this happening? Why is this behavior happening? What causes it? When does it happen? Why does it happen? Okay. Well, when we know those, we can understand how to limit those behaviors. And eventually, then you change the behaviors. And sometimes it might be at the end afterwards, you recognize it. It might be midway through. And then it gets to a point where it's before it even happens, to the point where there are no triggers, because you're able to transform that. Now, that is the work that I'm talking about. And we did that together. So, how in those moments, I would get him to say, to recognize me as, just see me as a 6-year-old child. See me as a little girl who never had love or hugs, who is scared that you're going to leave me, and I'm scared of abandonment. So, what you need to do is, like a fire, when you want to put out a fire, you smother it. I just need you to give me a hug and love and smother me to put me out and to diffuse the schmoolie. And he's like, really? Is it that easy? I was like, yeah, trust me. And initially it was like, oh, I don't really want to be hugging you when you're shouting at me. And then it did. And then it worked. He was like, huh. And I was like, see, that's what I need. It might not seem like I need, but just see me as this little 6-year-old girl like that. And he's like, okay, this is the psychology behind what happens when you have these behaviors. And he did. And he kept on doing it. And he had such formidable strength, because he was dealing with his own mother's death and her grief. And his mother was an alcoholic. So when I was reacting, responding, I was then triggering him.
Yeah.
So he had to deal with a lot of that. And we got through it. And like I said, he's now, we just have a formidable, like phenomenal relationship where we are open, talk about everything, and you can just see it. So it does take hard work, but that was the depths of what I had to overcome, because I said, I love you to bits, because he was saying that maybe we shouldn't be together. It's like, no, we do love each other. We just need to do the hard work to overcome all of the traumas that have been given to us, and overcome it to build a stronger bond. And that's exactly what happened. So yeah, that was very hard times, like 10 years ago.
Blimey. I mean, again, amazingly powerful story, though. I mean, I tend to, in concert with the low point, say, I tend to ask people what they learned from it. Well, you learned a lot.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and moved through it. Well, I mean, just yeah, hugely impressive. I mean, on a lighter note, I mean, you're very busy. You're doing all sorts of different stuff. You've talked about fitness training and so on, and former athlete and doing stuff now. But what else do you do to kind of unwind and relax? What's your your go to for chill time?
Yeah, so just family time is amazing for us to regenerate, and we love doing holidays and family trips. So I was serving in NATO in Italy, my last tour, and every opportunity going to visit the different areas, because that's just life and learning about different cultures, which is phenomenal. I think it's the one-off things that you look forward to, but also the habitual things that actually keep you energized. And I love my fizz, I really do. And I have a morning routine where I do like meditation, manifesting, and priming, which sets you up for the day. And I think that's a really good way of relaxing and just bringing your nervous system back in, to what strengthens you. And yeah, I've got some amazing friendships. They're deep friendships where, like really high quality, not superficial friendships, where we can just talk about deep, meaningful things. And I have an amazing set of friends that I'm really grateful for. And I said to you before as well, right, the gratitude practice, and how that daily gratitude practice, how it just realigns you and just re-energizes you. It's really scientifically proven to change and shape, and yeah, so I'd look into it. It's really good.
Yeah, no, no, definitely really interesting, and so much sort of positivity that comes from it. I can completely see that. That makes so much sense. I mean, just before we move into a kind of more general area, career-wise, I know from talking to you before, you're kind of heading to the end of your RAF career, potentially looking into the next chapter. What's next for you? Where are you heading to?
So it's going into trauma-informed leadership coaching. I really want to. It's almost like I found a purpose, like from all the pain that I've had, there's this purpose where I want to help people empower themselves and become the best version of themselves by letting go of the trauma from a coaching perspective, not a therapeutic perspective, because therapy sort of sits like in the past. And I think that there's a time and place for that, but we shouldn't spend our whole lives in therapy. Actually, coaching is looking at the future. How do you achieve that? Where are you going? Like, where are you now? Where do you want to go? Where's the gap? What's the bridge that you need? And sometimes understanding ourselves through understanding what traumatic events we might have been through. It's not just necessarily like childhood abuse. It might be anything that's happened. You just mentioned like last week you had a massive car accident, and that's, things like that happen in life. And it's how you strengthen your resolve to not allow it to negatively impact you. I think that's really crucial. So I've built a coaching course or coaching program, which is called Elevate and Empowered Evolution, which is 7 different pillars where you can really understand your whole ecosystem, your physical ecosystem of what helps you thrive. So lots of biohacking and science involved in that. Because I've adopted a fasting lifestyle now, and I fast in accordance with my cycle because of the scientific benefits of what happens when your body is not eating food, when you're not digesting food, and how that can reverse aging. It can detox cells that sometimes need repairing, and how beneficial that is. So I want to show people how beneficial that is. And I've led a fasting lifestyle for the past 3 years now, as well as the exercising and everything else. And it shows that you can actually like reverse your biological age quite significantly by adopting certain things. So this is all part of my coaching program to empower leaders when they truly understand all of the different things, how they can work smarter, not harder, and lead in smarter ways. So this coaching program is designed to do that, as well as being trauma informed leadership training within that. And I want to build a movement. I've having written my book, there are many people who've reached out and thanked me for having written it, because they've learned so much more about themselves. They may have had a similar experiences or different, but what they've said is that they want more. So I'm looking to create, and I want to create a defense network for trauma survivors to help them feel part of something. I firmly believe that if you look at the statistics, there are people that go into the military to escape families, and actually I think there's a need there to understand that they're not alone, and to feel seen and heard, and that will help strengthen them, because they're already pretty strong, because they've gone through quite a bit in their lives. And it's knowing that that is what is giving them strength. But if we unlock it even more, you can even reach further potential. So this is the stuff I want to go into. And there was a quote that I read once from the World Health Organization. It was a mental health report in 2022. And it stated that over half of all children globally, it's about 1 billion individuals, have been exposed to sexual and physical violence in the previous year. So this is in 2021, which means that you're highly likely to experience depression, anxiety, and PTSD. And that's our next generation workforce. So if we're not trauma informed about what adversity might happen, and seeing that and how we can help, that's going to impact. So this will, if we're not aware of it, it can impact with absenteeism, mental health days, etc., etc. But when we're trauma informed, we can actually strengthen those teams and help them to be more cohesive when understanding what's going on. So I think that's so important, especially with the way that the world is.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have no doubt, just based on this conversation, you'll make an enormous success of all of that, because you've got A, the experience, and B, the kind of approach and knowledge to really be very, very powerful in that space. I wish you absolutely, the very best, because I think it'd be an awesome, awesome offering. I mean, it's a good segue as well into where I normally go, because I always tend to talk to my guests about kind of their area of expertise and what they're kind of currently doing, and whether, and that might be sometime in the past that they've done that, or in your case, looking more forward to the future. Because I think this whole issue of mental health in the workplace is, with the work that I do now, which is obviously all away from defence and in the kind of corporate environment generally, is it's a topic that comes up all the time, and usually with a view that it's a problem for leaders because they've got people who are more fragile, more challenging to work with, and so on and so forth. But it's also a problem for the people at the bottom end, because obviously they do feel vulnerable, exposed, changes in the way that the world of work is going, not least things like AI. Is it an opportunity, or is it actually a threat? Is it going to take our jobs away? Climate, sustainability, economic pressures, financial burden before you even start work, all those kind of things all play into this. I'm just interested in your take on where that's going, and what kind of advice you're already offering to people in this space.
I think if you've been through challenges, it's to know that you're not broken, you've adapted. The survival patterns which I referred to like previously, what kept you alive at age 8 or whatever it was, are possibly sabotaging you at 38. So it's that awareness is crucial. So please do the inner work. So important. Self-aware leaders who really understand themselves are formidable leaders for other team people, because they can help the people see themselves more deeply as well. And I think that's absolutely crucial. I talked about asking for help with the SSC. The bravest word you'll ever say is help, and it's asking for help sooner. Especially for males who are like, I can't ask. Do it before your ego wants to. It's so important that you ask for help and know that it's just training. If you kind of change the stigma, it's not seen as weakness. It's actually the strongest, bravest thing you can ever do is do that. That's how you need to see it. And it's shifting that mindset. It's like, it's brain training. You get training on the work. It's actually understand your mind and your brain and what's happening in your prefrontal cortex. That's what it is. It's science training. And there are so many things you can read about now to empower your understanding of actually what's happening internally, and not just think, oh, this is just the way it is, or etc. You can actually change that. So I think that's absolutely crucial. And I firmly believe that healed people heal people, and this is where I want people to understand is, if you have gone through something and your story can help someone else, and it's absolutely crucial that I know that if I hadn't have shared my story and my truth and written my book, people who've reached out to me, some people have been in the military from all different services and civil servants, it's made an impact on their lives in a positive way. And that's because I chose courage and faith over fear. And that we can all do that. That's absolutely crucial. So that's what I would offer. If you're struggling with your own life, choose courage.
No, some great points, and yeah, so true. I think the kind of being honest with yourself, doing the inner work bit is a great description, because I think that there's also, I mean, I see it in myself as much as anything else. When I look back across my life, there are plenty of occasions when I think, if I'd learned some of the stuff and read some of the stuff that I have now read and done, I would have been much better informed and understanding about why I think that way, or because it isn't just it is that way. There are plenty of reasons, as you say, in the science and the way your brain works, that are going to influence that, and it's really important to get under the skin of it. No, fantastic. Two last questions. I always finish with these two questions. What's the most memorable experience of your life so far?
Oh, that's hard to pinpoint just one, isn't it? So
You can have more than one. I mean, I'm
okay,
not
that's
going
all
to
right.
nail you
So
to
it's like, oh,
just
there's just
one, but
what's the one? I think before I met my husband, it would have been leading that athletics team, that having that community around me. It's actually did really help with my healing journey. Being belonging to something is crucial, and community is phenomenal. Obviously, meeting my husband in the Falklands, that was timing and amazing. he's my rock now, and I'm so forever grateful for that Falkland. Even though I didn't want it, I was promoted, and got the Falklands of the Falklands. I was like, huh? I was like, okay, I'll take the Falklands, and lo and behold, it was what was waiting for me was phenomenal. And also one thing that is for my children, I had two hypnobirthing babies. So I gave birth to my daughter in my kitchen on purpose. It was a planned home birth, and it was one of the most profound, surreal moments that I've ever had. It was like this higher self led me to this place where I just breathed her into this world without interventions. I had four midwives just watching because you get two midwives and they had training midwives. So I had four midwives in my kitchen as I was giving birth, and she came into this world, my daughter, and there was no crying. No, there wasn't that. I normally think, oh, why is not crying? But she was, because she was born into a water pool, and then it was skin on skin, and she was just calm. And it was the most perfect birth that I could have ever wanted. And I remember just feeling this elation. And I'll never forget that moment of how she came into this world, this calmness and serenity, and this oxytocin overwhelm. So that was beautiful. Um, and yeah, publishing my book was pretty phenomenal. And also now, I chose to publish my book while still serving, while still in uniform, and that's for a reason. I remember when I was writing it, going, "Am I doing the right thing here? How will it be viewed? It's pretty raw and real." And I was like, "No, it's what I need to do to help the younger version of myself, because I really wish that when I joined up, that someone, I could have read, like, is this just me, or is it, there weren't many books written by survivors to help someone understand through a survivor's mind. And if I'd have had that, that would have been so helpful. So I know it's helping the younger version of myself. And I did a talk for the keynote for the Defence Mental Health and Wellbeing Network in October. There was a father in the audience listening who then bought my book, and he gave it to his daughter. And this young girl, she's in her 20s, she reached out to me on Instagram because I got my handle in the book. And she said, "Thank you. You say in your book you wish you could just help one person, and you've so helped me. I was in an awful relationship, very abusive relationship with my boyfriend, and I've hardly left the house in the past couple of years, but your book has helped me. So thank you so much. And I'm learning so much from it." And so you don't know who the ripple effect that you're having on people, lives that you've never met, people that you'll never see.
Mm.
That feedback is phenomenal. So it's given me more, this is my why. This is what I want to do to help people. And so obviously that, yeah, speaking in uniform to then give the courage to people who are wearing their uniform still to say, yeah, me too. And another story, just a few weeks ago, where someone had read my book. She reached out on the military internet, and she said, "Thank you. I've never told anyone. And I'm really grateful that you shared, because it's given me the courage." And for the first time in her life, she shared with someone what happened to her.
Mm.
You it's making a difference. I just need to just keep going with this, because it's changing lives. It's helping people,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's
No, I
crucial.
can completely see that, and yeah, no question about it. Oh, and out of interest with the book and publishing the book while you're still in uniform, did the Air Force ever take a position on that? Were they supportive, helpful? How did they operate?
They just you send it to I can't remember the name of the organization, like the communications team, and they just want to make sure that what you talk about is not giving away secrets. And stuff like that. I was like, no, just my secrets. Nothing towards your own,
Yeah, no
actually,
state
because
secrets
of,
here. It's
yeah,
about
yeah, because of and obviously I talk about the time when I was in Afghanistan and the challenges that I had as a survivor working in that environment. It's very high pressured as it is, but for me, sleeping, and I explained earlier, the hyper alertness with sleeping and light was made it even more challenging. But then what I did to counteract that was I'm a spin instructor, so I love exercise to music. Music has been my thing because it reappraises anxiety in a scientific way. So music has always been my go-to to help change and reappraise. So I decided to become an exercise to music instructor, and spinning was one of my things. So I've always taught it all around the world. And I taught it 4 times a week in Afghanistan because it energized me and motivated me. And yeah, you'd see these SAS guys coming in, and I'm like, you know what I mean? But you're training them, and this was crucial. So it's really important that you understand like how beneficial exercise and music and all that stuff is for healing. But that's the sort of thing that I wanted to get across. So
Yeah, and I'm glad they were helpful with it because of the, again, I think that's one of the things that has really progressed is from a military standpoint. I mean, I can well imagine if I was 20 years ago, doing a similar thing, I might have got quite a different stance in terms of, you want to do what? No, I don't think we're going to let you do that. Whereas now, I think they're much more forward leaning about it, much more helpful. So, no, it's great. Hey, very
yeah.
last question is one I always ask, which is what's the most difficult question you've ever been asked?
Mm. I think, and I describe this in my book, for the officer and aircrew selection course. It's a 4-day interview, isn't it? If you remember, back then.
Very well.
Um, yes, not just 1 hour; it's 4 days long. And obviously, part of that is an hour interview with. I think there was a group captain and 2 wing commanders in the room, and I thought I'd nailed it. I thought I've learned what the fast jets are, and you learned what offensive, defensive aircraft. I've done all the homework, felt in a strong, positive place. And then the one question which blindsided me, and I was not expecting it, they asked, so we've noticed you've not put anything on the application form about your father. Why not? And I was like a rabbit in headlights going, I was not expecting this question. Why are they asking me about my father? And I knew that, well, as an officer, you have honesty and integrity. You need to answer honestly. So I did. I basically said, well, I no longer have a relationship with him. And that was it. And it was the truth. But it was a difficult question because in that moment, I had to make so many different just like thoughts to create an answer. And I was like, well, what if I go into that? And then it's like, just be honest and be truthful and then go there. But it was difficult, and I explain how it felt in that moment in quite a lot of detail in the book, because there will be times when you have to respond, and this is what officers do, as leaders do. Like you'll be like, oh, how am I going to deal with that? And it's computing all of that, but leading with that honesty, integrity is the most important thing to do. So really difficult question, and as you know why it was difficult in knowing how to answer it, because of I was back then thinking if they knew what my parents were like, I don't think they will think that I'm good enough to be let in. They might judge me. What happens if they judge me and then go, yeah, you've failed, and there's all of these feelings of doubt, and that was crucial. But I think I just lead with honesty and integrity in everything that you do, and you can't go wrong. And yeah, and hopefully I've shown that you can change and you don't have to be judged by what other people are or your family are. You can be exactly who you want to be despite those cards. Yeah.
Well, boy, have you done that in this interview. I mean, I said at the top of the session that I thought it'd be a fascinating conversation. It's been way more than fascinating. It's been absolutely brilliant. You have shared so much about yourself with great honesty, great integrity, but also just as importantly, you've provided some phenomenal advice and some great tips to people, which I mean, hopefully those who are watching or listening to this will find incredibly useful. It might even generate a few more book sales for you, which would be a very good thing. And I'm very sure that when you step out of uniform and go and do your next chapter, doing your coaching endeavor, that you'll be enormously successful because you've got such a great backstory to inform that. And I wish you the very, very best of luck. But Jacqui, thank you very much indeed, and really been a great privilege to talk to you today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for firstly inviting me, but allowing me to share my story. And it's been a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Brilliant. Glad, loved it. Take care. Bye-bye. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode with Jacqui Wilkinson. I think, as I said at the front end, I think she's a remarkable lady. She's achieved a huge amount with some really challenging backstory to kind of fill or create challenge for her, I suppose, in her early years that she's overcome so incredibly successfully, and that's great to see. And I really applaud her in every way for what she's done. If you've enjoyed it and you found it interesting and you think other people would benefit from it and and would learn something and get a really positive message from what Jacqui's been doing, then please do share it. Please push this around to people and make sure that the story and this remarkable lady gets the kind of visibility that she deserves from all of this, for sure. So subscribe if you haven't already subscribed, follow if you haven't already followed, share it, repost it, comment on it, give me some feedback on it, all those kind of things. That would be immensely helpful. As ever, if this stuff's valuable to you, think about supporting the show financially. Go through the support the show link and go to patreon.com and join as either a supporter, a champion, or a patron of the show, where for really not a lot of money you can make a tremendous difference to the long-term viability of the podcast and and obviously really help me out in terms of giving me back some value for hopefully the value that I'm providing to you through these episodes. But either way, I love it that you join. I'm really loving it. If you've listened this far or watched this far, that's great. So thank you very much indeed. Keep doing that. And I'll see you again very soon. Thanks very much indeed. Bye now.